big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. These are tough and trying times, and as you can see, I'm coming to you straight from my drawing room. And I assume this is going to be the new normal for some time. Well, what do 1.3 billion people do? How do they behave when they're all under lockdown? That's going to be the discussion today for over the next half hour on brand equity. This is a special showing simply because it's the first time we're going to be out of the studio in remote locations and having a discussion. And joining me today to discuss how does a nation that houses 1.3 billion people behave are two very special guests. I have the CEO of BARC India, Sunil Lulla, and Dolly Jha, who is the country head of Nielsen Global Media, joining me as well. Thank you so much, Sunil and Dolly. Truly a pleasure having you on Brand Equity.
Hi, Sonali. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Before I get to banging out the questions, I must let all our viewers know that both BARC and Nielsen together have put out so far a 3-week report which really looks at data, looks at media consumption habits over the last 3 weeks in when India was just about hit hard with the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course subsequently the nation lockdown. So we're really going to understand from both these experts today as to what India been watching, what India been doing. Are these habits really triggered just by anxiety, which we're all facing, and are just a blip, or are these here to stay? Remember, 21 days is really a habit maker or breaker. So are these the new normals that we're going to see? And how do advertisers, media companies, and other stakeholders really look at this data and remodel the way they function? So starting with you, Sunil, you've put out this 3-week report and you've been, giving us a blow-by-blow, update week to week as to what's been happening. What, according to you, are the big headlines for you in terms of the drastic shifts in media consumption?
So this is the third edition. We release a report every week. In 2019, at any given point of time between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m., there were 222 million people watching television every day. This number has significantly increased now by more than 12%. It is 627 million people watching television every day. So 222 going up to 627, which is the average reach that's gone up from earlier 560 reach of 1 minute. So you've seen that growth. 2, you've seen the highest time being spent on television, 4 hours 48 minutes. Just purely in the last 3 weeks, this has increased by an hour. The earlier average used to be 3 hours 46 minutes in the beginning of the year. That's gone up to 4:48. On an average, about a third of the country watch television 7 days a week. It's close to 50% which is watching TV 7 days a week. They are watching 16 channels in a week on an average. They are watching 23 channels now in a week. You've seen big growth in genres like news, in movies, and of course last week was a phenomenon when Doordarshan became the number 1, the most watched channel in India. I think TV brings credibility. Obviously there is anxiety. People are looking for information. A lot of the general entertainment programming don't have new original programming because it's not being filmed, it's not being shot, it's not being produced. So they're going to turn to news, they're going to turn to movies. You see a phenomenon where even the kids viewing of news has increased. The entire home is actually there together for extended hours. Last week, we saw one more phenomenon where we saw people starting watching television from 4 in the morning and closing it down to as late as 2 a.m. So that gives you a good snapshot.
Next question, I'd like to bring you in, Dolly. Given what Sunil has just said, I want to first talk about, redefining prime time. Would you say that the old definition and the standard classic way of how we all defined, prime time, especially news, even general entertainment channels, will have to be, completely remodeled because any time is prime time, and we're not particularly sure when things will go back to normal?
So I will really talk about the digital perspective, right? Because that is something that we've captured. that is something that we have studied extensively. Now, one thing that I can tell you clearly is that let's just look at some big trends before we start talking about the prime time or whether the redefined prime time is going to be a new normal, right? So I think if we just look at some big trends which have emerged in digital, I think one thing that we are clearly seeing is that one, overall, if you just look at the kind of time which consumers are spending on their smartphones, that's gone up by about 12%. Okay, so on an average, about 4 hours a day is the kind of time which consumers are spending on smartphones. Okay, that's one. The second big trend that we have really picked up is that if you look at social networking, if you look at time which is spent on chatting, this time has really gone up by 40%. So that's other big thing that we are seeing. Okay, now if you look at specific activities which consumers have really taken up, right, whether it is a VOD consumption, we see an increase happening out there. We see digital news picking up. That's a new trend which has come, and we've seen a significant increase which has really happened there. We've got new users who've got added. We've seen a 30% increase in time which consumers are spending on digital news. If you look at the kind of traction which gaming has acquired, so there are various activities which have got added onto consumers life. Now my take on this entire thing is that if we have to really total up the amount of time which consumers are spending on total media, be it television or be it smartphone, one would imagine that the total amount of time would have actually gone up. Unfortunately, Sonali, at this point of time, we do not have a single source measurement, which is that from the same consumer, we do not have what is the kind of number of hours that I'm spending. But I would imagine, if you look at about 4 hours a day on smartphone, nearly 4 hours a day on smartphone, about 5 hours a day on television, right? And if this were to have come from a single source, I would say that net, the total amount of time that consumer is spending is going up. That's one. As far as prime time, non-prime time is concerned, as far as digital media is concerned, we've looked at some trends. So for example, we've seen that what is the kind of share of news consumption across time bands between television and smartphones, right? Now there we've seen that for most of the day parts, it matches pretty well. But when it comes to prime time, it is really television where we see a big peak which happens over smartphone. So we've seen some of those differences. But I think at this point of time to say that, what is the kind of new prime time which is emerging, I think it's a little difficult.
Is that your view too, Sunil, that, that there is a non-defined prime time emerging? Is that your view too? Or do you think that what is the new prime time needs to be defined?
I'd like to put this in context, okay? There is a growth in what was earlier called non-prime time, which is preceding 6 p.m. That growth since the time of the COVID crisis in India has grown by 81%. Now that is phenomenal. That is coming from the stream that people start now watching news at 4:15 and they shut down by watching movies till 2 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so 6 to 12 is considered as prime time, and 6 p.m. to 12 midnight is considered prime time. So that's been the growth. Prime time still has that classic hump which has always had of everybody being at home.
Yeah.
In this period, when everybody is at home, you should expect the TV to be on for much longer. It's a credible source of information.
But my question is, now that we've seen this big hump, whether it be on our devices or it be on TV, and this might continue, let's say, for the next couple of months, before things actually normalize, if they do you see this becoming the new norm, because these are the new habit makers? Because we've seen TV make a big comeback even globally because of the anxiety that people are going through. So do you look at this as the big comeback of TV globally, and of course the big growth in TV in India as well?
So globally, yes, there has been extended viewing of time, and there's also been new walk-ins, people who may not have been watching television come in frequently. The younger people, the newer generation, globally not so keen to television, still have a lot of access to digital content. In India, television is #1 source of information, entertainment across age groups, across SEC, across marketplace, across states in India. So what's the opportunity, right, for TV today, and what's the reason? The reason today is really they're watching a lot of news because they want the information on what's happening on the crisis. Two, they're watching movies. Where there is entertainment, they're watching entertainment. They're catching up on repeats. You saw the big ramp up that Doordarshan had. They're also watching repeats of earlier hits on other private broadcasters. What's important is it's a good time for broadcasters to consider promoting some of the shows which may not have that great footfalls. It's a good time for broadcasters to consider trying to do some social activation if it's possible on their television to educate and communicate to consumers. They will grow their franchise and loyalty of those consumers. If you look at advertising, it's largely been products which are like like hand wash products, sanitation products, some of the food products. But I think that volume of advertising is dropping because purely of supply chain reasons. And the increase has been where there is digital video, digital audio, or digital payments.
Right. I agree. But I want you to go out on a limb and tell me, do you see is this just a blip? Like we've seen kids, movies, and news be the biggest contributors in the TV universe for the last few weeks. Do you see this habit continuing? Are these new habits that we're going to see forming within the nation?
See, in 2019, there were 4 big occasions when people came back on television. Balakot, 370, the elections, and the intensity of rains. These are 4 big features of news events which drove people. But overall news stayed for the year at 7 to 8% of total television time, total television contribution. It's now gone all the way to 20-21%, which is 3 times increase. When people are allowed to socialize and move out, you will see a drop, I imagine, in terms of this phenomenon that we are seeing now. But the one thing that is here to stay is the credibility of television as a prime source of information and quality entertainment. I think those two are very clear. I believe some new habits will get formed. Many people would not have been born when Ramayana was first telecast in 1987, and there's a whole new generation that's watching them. So for some of these shows and some of these channels and networks, there are going to be benefits. So as an advertising medium, I think it's established, it's got the eyeballs, it's got the ability to sustain the family and engage them. So it's only going to grow the confidence of advertisers to invest in this medium.
Dolly, if I could bring you in, do you want to add to what Sunil said in terms of, is this going to be, a new habit formation? Are we going to see these increased levels of engagement, whether it be with TV or with smartphones, continuing, as the new normal? And what does that mean for the advertising universe?
Sonali, I certainly believe that some of the things that we have observed during this time, I think some habits will definitely get formed, okay? And I want to talk about some of them. So for example, if you look at online education, okay? Yeah. You will not believe that in metros amongst parents, we have seen that the time which was being spent on online education on smartphones has gone up by 96%, right? That's a huge number that we are talking about, right? Now, I would say that online education, gaming, some of these categories, online news consumption, right? Some of these categories, okay, definitely there are new habits which are being formed, and I would imagine that a section of consumers will definitely stay on with these habits, okay? Even if you look at on the VOD side, we have seen a very strong increase in things like movies. We've seen a very strong increase in things like originals, right? Again, I would say that it's not that OTTs were not there, right? OTTs were always there. But now, given the fact that I'm in a lockdown environment, okay, there are certain behaviors, that I'm having to do, and some of these behaviors are definitely going to be staying on with me. Now, the implication for advertisers really is that, and we were looking at some data on digital ads, okay, and we looked at whole host of categories. And what we actually saw is that across most categories, if you just look at the average number of publishers who are used for digital ad campaigns, it is really between a 2 or 3, barring some 2 categories where there are 5 to 6 publishers on an average which are used. Otherwise most campaigns are using just 2 to 3 publishers, right? Now the implication of all of this, what I really see in this, what the current thing is going to be fueling, is that I do believe that with newer avenues opening up in things like OTTs, in things like gaming, in things like online education, okay, I do believe that this publisher spread, publisher mix in ad campaign should be increasing. So that is one implication which I definitely see.
Okay. And if I ask you in terms of, crisis communication and the way brands have participated, during these tough and trying times, would you say that, brands have actually woken up and have participated in a meaningful manner to ensure that they maintain relevance with consumers, but at the same time also ensuring that their communication is not very opportunistic?
I think so. I think there are enough examples that we have seen within India, where I think brands have risen to the occasion, and they have really tried to do a meaningful messaging, which is extremely relevant in today's times, right? So if you look at communication from Lifebuoy, if you look at communication from Godrej, if you look at communication from Zomato, if you look at communication from Amul, if you look at communication from Mumbai Police,
Yeah.
who would have imagined that brands are really going to be rising to the occasion so quickly? The agility which brands have shown, the kind of meaningfulness in messaging which the brands have shown, I think it's been phenomenal. So I think there's some great examples that we have seen closer homes. Of course, you have examples of McDonald's and Cokes that we've seen, but I think closer home also we've seen some really meaningful messaging.
How about you, Sunil? Would you be in agreement, or do you think brands, let's say, that are not essential at the moment, which because of the lockdown, have decided to stay away? And would you say, to maintain relevance and to maintain recall, top of mind recall, they should continue to participate and be relevant in and advertise?
So let's break it up into 2 parts. Up till March 31st, a lot of advertisers had fixed contracts. So they had to continue their communication even if the supply chain was disrupted. At present, you see products like hand wash, sanitation, disinfectants, oral hygiene products like these are communicating and promoting their brands. So that is a good positive part. I think there's a return to ice cream and certain beverages because it's becoming warmer as we speak. But yes, Sonali, I agree with you. This is really a good time to build trust. Why do people watch so much television? They want to hear it from authoritarian voices as to what's happening and what this means for them. And a brand that can communicate, I care for you, I'm here for you, I know you're going through a crisis, but we are in this together, and they find their own novel and innovative way to do this, will win the consumer's trust. If I understand correctly, we anticipate seeing the opening of some of the supply chain in the next 1 week or so. And as that happens, and as more products and services are available, consumers who can afford so and who do need these products will go out and reach out to them.
Sure. As we enter a phase where we are uncertain about when, the normal lives that we knew of is going to come back, would you say that, whether it be the news genre or it be OTT, basically people who can still function because production has stalled for general entertainment channels, what would your messaging be, both for the digital world, which can actually somehow manage to give out content, and platforms such as ours, news channels and other genres that can actually supply content, be to ensure that they don't lose this captive audience once the anxiety has been soothed?
See, first of all, I think the news industry is doing a yeoman's service and they're working hard round the clock. They're taking the right precautions as advised by the government, but they're doing a yeoman's service out there ensuring consumers are informed, their viewers are informed with facts. So what's important is credibility, is facts. What's important is being able to give people a simple story and the whole story. Being able to share with them multiple points of views on what they can do. I think somewhere consumers also look for a break. They look for some lightness, some other things to do. So some of the channels have started investing in do-it-yourself at home. You're seeing this in the online space too. Some people are shooting shorter videos and assembling it and then making vignettes out of that. There could be programming, there could be music, there could be many other ways. I think the trust that the news business has gained at this point of time, it's the news business's responsibility to take this trust forward and to continue the good work that it's doing and to build on it. Same goes for entertainment. They know that they aren't able to continue their shows, but they have bought in some of the classics, they've bought in some of the repeats from the earlier, they're able to do a catch up, so they are able to get new consumers into it. The entire essence is of continuity. And if you'd like your consumers to continue with you, you should reciprocate with continuity.
Dolly, if I could ask you if you've seen, or even if Sunil has some information on this, have we seen a sizable increase in OTT subscriptions, be it AWOD or SWOD, because of this period of lockdown? Has there been a significant spike?
Sonali, there isn't a definitive data that we have at this point of time, but one would imagine from whatever we are seeing, right? Because I can talk about the genres, the categories which have increased, right? So, I've really seen some big pickup happening on, like I mentioned, on originals, on movies. Okay, if you just look at the kind of user base which each of these platforms, each of the OTT platforms have acquired during this period, we are seeing a growth there. Okay, also if you look at engagement, we are definitely seeing the engagement growing up there. To give you a definitive view on how much of that would be a AWOD versus SWOD, I think that is a little limiting at this point of time.
Okay. Sunil, have you seen new subscribers? Do you think it's advantage OTT now?
So, there's another way to look at subscriber. Let's just talk about TV first before we come to OTT. Because many consumers aren't able to recharge their cable bill, many of the cable operators have given them an extension. The government has said that you must provide and therefore continue at least with the basic package if they cannot do the full package over there. So I think DTH operators and cable operators have played a very good act in recognizing their subscribers as being really essential and important to them and allowing them to continue with their services. I understand from the OTT subscription players, they have definitely seen an upswing. You can see the advertising which has increased amongst OTT players on television. The third thing to look at is Quibi got launched in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, day before yesterday, and it came into India this morning. Now that's a first. That's such a fast rollout. They've come into India with a trial package, and then you can continue with it. It's American programming. It's different, but the point is they wouldn't have thought of India. This is an opportunity for them to bring those shows and those series to new audiences.
Absolutely. These are definitely trying times, but I think everybody is, innovating and trying to play their best hand ever. Having said that, thank you both of you for taking time out and giving us your insights. We hope to continue to chat with you as and when you bring us more insights during this trying and dark phase. I'd like to sign off by saying it's ironic that we're all out of our comfort zones. But the irony really lies in that we're most uncomfortable about being jailed in our comfort zone. But with that, thank you so much, Sunil. Thank you so much, Dolly. Pleasure having you on Brand Equity. Stay safe and stay happy. Thank you so much.
You too, and your viewers. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks so much.